I still can't hear the goddamn theme tune. And we are sharing the space here.
Let's work this out. Happy 100th, Henrik.
Yeah, happy 100th, Corey. It's nice to finally do an episode face to face. Like, sharing the same goddamn location. Which at this time appears to be a crypt of some sort.
Uh-huh. Have you ever been in a library, Henrik? This is what it looks like. I am here in Helsinki with Henrik. This is the first episode ever that we are recording together in the same goddamn room.
It only took 2 fucking years for us to, reach this point.
Yeah. Well, that's the mysteries of technology. Luckily, we've been able to do this as far as we have been able to. I've never thought we would ever reach this 100th episode. I really didn't. You remember when we were happy when we got through the first 7 episodes?
Oh yeah, those were the days.
Oh God, that was the curse of the 7th.
Yeah, now you just look back to those days and wish that the curse would have claimed us.
Yeah, this is kind of pleasant actually. I don't have to look for any kind of audio problems when we are doing this, like audio levels suddenly dropping and Henrik crashing and where the F is Henrik for the last 30 minutes and what happened.
That's what you are saying. No, just wait until you get the audio files, and all of a sudden you notice that the voice level still drop, and there's some problem with Rode, and my Audacity crashes halfway through, and somehow crashes your Mac, even though they are not even connected in any way.
Yeah, something that might happen is here that we run out of battery. So this time it's not gonna be 8 hours.
Thank God.
Yeah. This room has no electricity socket for us, so we'll just have to deal with 2 hours.
But it's over 2 years now with this podcast, because we did have that longer break in between when we didn't release any episodes. So now that we reached the official 100th, we have actually done this more than 2 years.
Yeah, we started in July 2018 or so. And the first episode came out on August 14th, 2018.
Yeah, and now it's something.
Yeah. July something.
Yeah, like what are
July
dates?
2nd.
But in celebration of this milestone, which absolutely nobody appreciates, let's open the bubbly.
Wow. Watch out for the lights.
I just have to aim at your head.
And that'll be that.
That'll be that. Yeah. So pass on the glass. God damn it.
Oh.
I can't vouch for the quality of the drink. I went to the local alcohol boutique which sells alcohol.
Oh.
And I asked for some good bubbly, and then I mentioned, and the lady in the store directed me into this one shell ale, which had a lot of juicy looking brands, and then I mentioned that I'm a film podcaster, and she redirected me into the ale, which apparently was selling rat piece amongst other things. So
I noticed that it took a great while for you to come out of there, so I think she was plotting something. Yeah. Kippis.
Hölkyn kölkyn, as we say in the civilized circles. Perseet olalle.
Nastrovia. Yeah, but it looks like Poland is behind me. Most of the episodes that we have recorded, I have been recording them from Poland. Yeah, I've been working there for about 5 years. And now I came to Helsinki. My project in Poland is about to be over soon. So I have no idea what the future is going to bring to me, but that's kind of the exciting part. I actually enjoy being homeless.
Spoken like a true hipster.
Spoken like a true Finn. Like, everything is moderately fine. The society will take care of you if needed, and there's always the safety net. Yeah. Truth to be told, I'm completely tired of sitting in front of a computer. I do it for this podcast, I do it for my job. For many days, it's been like this. I start 8 a.m. working. I have one laptop for work. And then it becomes 4 p.m. I throw the computer to the corner, and here comes the next laptop to work on the Flick Lab. Fortunately, I've found great new software lately that also Henrik has been finding, but maybe hasn't had the great success with it as I have
No.
had.
The wonders of modern technology kind of hate me.
Yeah, but Reaper has been my good buddy for, I don't know, over 6 months now. It's made the editing process way easier. What used to take, like, I don't know, 3 full evenings even, or more, it's now about 1 evening. So, really satisfied. And today, yeah, the latest episode was pushed out, Alien, 1979. The craziest stuff is still about to come to your earbuds.
I don't know. The ride has been pretty crazy up until this far already.
Yeah. What's your craziest ride here?
It must have been the Andalusian dog. that was something else.
Yeah.
Only one of those episodes where we get completely shit faced during the recording. It just resort from your average, well constructed, well kind of argued episode into just drunken young yelling and.
I guess we should do it more often. It's just the dark and after, which is a problem. Okay, what are we going to talk about here?
Oh, actually, I have no idea. I haven't prepared or planned anything. I know that you posted the dog, which was supposed to be the blueprint for this episode. I read it exactly once, quickly. Then I noticed that there were some games, and I immediately like skipped, and I haven't done anything to prepare for those games because. To be absolutely honest, after the last time, I would actually rather fuck a rotting corpse of a horse than redo games in this episode.
Wow. Personally, I thought these were the best part of the podcast.
Like, never again. Absolute time wasters. We just dragged on the recording process to the 11th hour.
But it was a good idea in the 50th when you suggested that we kind of sprinkle these games throughout this episode, and it was quite flawlessly, manufactured in the end. It sounded almost natural.
Okay, I can't say anything on that record because even today I haven't listened to the 50th episode.
What?
It takes fucking 5 years to go through the 50th episode.
Only 7 hours. Yeah. That was crazy.
That was.
I remember I had even problems putting it together because I realized that there was some limitation in the WAV file format, that it's not accepting a certain length of files. I remember the crying after that episode came out from our listeners. Like 7 hours?
Are you insane? Yeah, quite literally. Yeah, we are insane. But in my defense, I was actually counting on you just recording like what it took 15 hours of raw material. Something like that. Because these episodes, the recording always lasts half as long as the original or the episode that we publish.
Yeah.
So if anyone is wondering how long it actually takes for us to record an episode, just take the episode length and double it.
Yeah.
So with the 7 hour long 50th episode, it was something like 15 hours, which it took to record. So I was counting that we just record, for 15 hours of material, and then you just, just take and just throw most of it out, like edit outright, delete, and the end result would be something like an hour max.
Well, that's the problem when you record a lot of material. It's going to quadruple your work when you go to the umpteenth hours, and then yeah, it's really hard to just put it into a concise unit in like 3 days or 4 or 5 days. What I had to work on it, but ultimately, if you are a super fan of this podcast, I think you will like the end product. There were quite a lot of topics that we actually went through. So,
I don't remember half of them.
yeah, me neither anymore.
But yeah, that's I guess the reason why you are the one doing the editing on the podcast, because my style of editing is much more kind of a hatchet job. Like, I just quickly go through the audio and I'm like, yeah, out, trash, not usable, and then yeah, this is okay, and just quickly, copy and paste the different pieces that I feel that are something usable together, and just haphazardly throw everything else out when I'm editing.
Yeah, I still see this as some kind of a talk show type of format that we just record and we don't really tamper that much with the end product. And well, given that we still record an insane amount of material every week, I have kind of a pretty good excuse just to keep it as it is, more or less, just to get out all the ums and ahs and wondering what the hell was this English word once again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
How do you say minun nimeni in English?
Yeah. Sometimes get total brain failures here.
but then again, we are doing this goddamn podcast on English.
Yeah.
Like every rational person would when you are coming from a Finnish-speaking country. So good luck for us,
Yeah, indeed. It would have been probably useful for us if we would have wanted to look for another niche in the Finnish market to do this in Finnish. But, at least we're accessible for everybody that we know of. But yeah, the best possible reach.
Yeah.
And the hardest way to get an audience, probably.
Most likely. Also, the hardest way for us to speak.
Yeah, we are not as smooth speakers as our Swedish brothers.
No. As our listeners have, our lovely listeners have been pointing out during these 2 years.
But at least I have tried to desperately get this podcast more to the direction that we would go through mainly international cinema, so-called international cinema. Everything is international, but try to get out of the Hollywood machine to go target these movies that people have a special interest on, like freaking Inuk from Greenland. So I think we are kind of the top target on YouTube regarding Inuk.
Most likely, but nobody knows fucking Inuk.
Yeah, well,
So good luck there.
let's see. Oh, we're the second result, at least according to this browser. I'm logged in, by the way. Let's go to the other browser. See what it says.
And now it's fucking nothing. We are pushed to page 50.
No, well, there you go.
There's like 15 million playlists before us.
Oh well, trying to make the world a better place, episode by episode. No, but I think it's kind of cool that we're talking about the movies that most people are not talking about. We did this Alien. Don't know what you think about that. Like, do you want to talk about more of the big Hollywood worldwide classics, or to get more into Latin America now, or what?
I'm kind of a mixed. To me, it's never really been that much of an issue what films we talk about. Of course, when we are doing something out of the Hollywood machine or the Finnish cinema, it always means that we have to do like godless amounts of background work. for the episode. Because before you can really criticize and analyze a film like we do, you kind of have to also understand the country from which the film is coming from. You have to understand the history, you have to understand the political history, you have to understand the art history of any given country or region. And that always takes a hell of a lot of background work to do, because surprise surprise, when you visit a country you just barely have heard before, and then you start to skim through the history of that country, it's of course it's always going to be like insane amount of work. Like we are talking about doing the same stuff that people dedicate years of their lives, and they write like academic papers about these topics, and then we are just trying to kind of do it quickly within 3 to 1 week, usually 1 week time limit.
Unfortunately, we have the guests, at least usually when it's getting into crazy gear, like what we did this. Oh God, remind me of this chicken burning movie. Oh, this.
Yellen.
Yeah, yeah, that one. That was so culturally tied, but we managed to do it. We gave enough time for us, and I think it came out all right. Of course, I think it always becomes 5 times better with somebody who is from the region telling us something about it.
Yeah. It does kind of it does make the episode stronger, because we get a type of insider knowledge from that country or region. So of course it helps. Then again, every now and then you kind of have to ask yourself how much you get out of any given guest. Up until this point, we have been really lucky with our guests, because we have had really great guests on the podcast. But of course, there is, since we are kind of keeping it on the ground level with the guests, it means that the educational level of our guests, it keeps changing. It's not stable, and also when it comes to personal and political views, and for example understanding something like the language of cinema, and well, even understanding your own territorial history, it kind of gets there's a danger that it can get into being a really mixed bag, because we don't have like any kind of a quality assurance. For example, if we would just interview people of the academia, we would at least be able to say to ourselves that, well, this person is a professor from this country or from this area of studies. But with people of the street, you don't have that luxury, so it's kind of more of a gamble.
There might be a higher level of success of getting these episodes out there via these guests, for example, because they would have like really special interest in the subject that they're talking about. And that's one thing. And I think we have to pay more attention to these guests in the future.
Yeah, I would say also, although that out of the way, I do have to emphasize that we haven't had a bad guest this far.
No.
Yeah, like up until this point, all our guests have been really great, and they have all brought more material to the episode they have visited. So it's nothing like I'm sour from some past previous experience type of thing, but there is always, of course, the risk. Like same with for example Finnish people. It's two different things to have a Finnish professor as your guest, and simply picking some rando from the street to appear on your podcast. We do have some shit tier professors on this country, so the academic status is not an automatic guarantee of anything, but there is some kind of a level of trust that you can have with the guest when he or she comes from academia or from the industry or something else.
On the other hand, there isn't many things to trust on when you have two Finnish guys who often don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, but we try to do our podcast background work.
We do, and I would say like well, this is congratulatory
Blah,
blah, blah, blah,
That thing.
statement, that thing statement. But but since we are in the 100th episode, and this is supposed to be a celebration, I think we can, afford some packing ourselves in the back here. So I would say we have actually succeeded in our background work pretty well up until this point. Like for these past 2 years, we have done some pretty stellar background work.
Yeah.
At least to a point where it hasn't really harmed our understanding and interpretation of any given movie that we have approached.
I would say that it hasn't always been that stellar. Well, on some weeks you have less time, and do you still have the same approach that you spend, like for example, 30 minutes from Monday, and then the next day you do some research and you kind of spread it all over the week?
No, to me it's haphazard.
Yeah.
I try to do something like 3 hours a day of background work minimum.
Yeah.
I try to make sure that at least 3 hours a day.
Wow.
But that I have failed it a couple of occasions, and even with that, it's not evenly spread.
Yeah.
Like I get still these days when I do 7 hours, and then there's a day when I don't manage to do anything.
Yeah, it's anything but organized when I'm trying to do anything during my week. But somehow we are at the 100th episode.
Yeah, and even with the level of dedication that goes into the background work, and the failing of that dedication, I still do manage that. Even though there are episodes, most definitely there are episodes where our background work has been stronger than in some other episode, we still haven't reached the epic point where we would have completely misunderstood the film.
Well, that is always what I'm fearing, that some listener that knows more than we do comes to listen to the episode and then starts some kind of a Reddit post, and everybody is shit talking us that these guys got it completely wrong.
I'm fine with that. I would be fine with that when the condemnation would come from a member of that country or that region. Like, fair enough. If we fail our audience on that regard and we get called out, by all means. What I'm fearing is the situation like what I'm aiming at is that understanding the history of any country and understanding the political and the art history of a region, it kind of means the difference between, do you see the Serbian film as nothing else but just a shock movie that tries to be as edgy as possible and has no artistic merits in it whatsoever? Or do you actually see it as rather shocking and pretty vile movie that still actually has a political and artistic statement behind it?
Yeah.
Like, if I would fuck up that badly, then I would have to kind of rethink my position as a co-host.
It depends on the film so much, how much you do your background work. And for me, it's so sporadic. Usually, it's been for the last month something like that I spent almost the entirety of the day, usually Saturday, on the background research, and then try to put whatever I can together on Sunday before we record. And that's how it usually goes.
And that's something where actually touching upon Finnish movies or typical Hollywood movies kind of eases us out and helps us a bit. because we as Finns we already are somewhat familiar at least with Finnish history and Finnish art history. We do understand what we are talking about when we are talking about a Finnish movie, and the same goes for your typical Hollywood movie, because America is such of a big cultural exporter that even if you hadn't studied America itself, you still kind of do have at least a vague idea what America is and what America is about. So you have that first touching point, and you can start to analyze the film with that knowledge that you've gotten from the American pop culture.
Yeah, that kind of helps us out every time that we have some kind of crazy run of 4 movies from interesting countries that we've never visited in our lives, even as movies. I guess that is every now and then needed, that we go back to basics or the area that we understand the best.
Yeah, I would say so. Also the fact that, well, we still are the super elitist podcast who would completely look down upon the Hollywood machine products. So on that regard, also it does us. I do think it does us good that every now and then we visit Hollywood film.
Zombie strippers, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that was the Everyman film. God, that was a film of the working class.
Yeah, we were quite wasted. And after listening to that podcast, raw recording, and what I had been talking, especially in Finnish, it might have given to somebody the idea that I was interested in sexually harassing my co-host, but
Which is really troubling, seeing that we are actually sharing this tomb together.
yeah,
Like you just keep your hands to yourself, mister.
well, it's Corona time. What?
God bless.
Yeah. But hey, for one, I'm really kind of tired of talking about the episodes 1 to 50 because we have talked.
we
enough
have talked about that.
So maybe we can go through our kind of newer production and move on with our lives a little bit. Quick recap. Yeah, so we started after the 50th with our new anthem, the new theme, and the guitar and everything that you hear there as the new elements. They are done by Nick Grivell. It's like a friend of a friend. There was one friend who said that he didn't unfortunately have time to do this work for me, and then he guided me to contact this other guy, Nick, and I think he did a really fantastic job. We went through a couple of versions, and then finally the perfectionist in me was happy with the result, and I thought it was a kind of a nice amalgamation of what we had as in the sound before, and then kind of updating it. And if we ever make the third version, I think it would move even further away from the original, or at least the super funky techno sounds that I made.
I'm still waiting for the dubstep remix.
You can do that yourself.
And in the background you have our studio dog Jeppe,
Yep.
who doesn't know how to act in a goddamn recording studio.
Yeah. Henrik is a scary person, apparently. We started with the we were going through the Bond marathon at the time, The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977. We went through that. Any memories about that? Well, I remember always having a good time with our guest Tom Frankland there, so...
I don't even remember what film was The Spy Who Loved Me.
I kind of thought you would not. Okay. Yeah, Henrik is the kind of guy, right, who goes through one movie and then moves on with his life. Never comes back to it.
Never looked back to it.
Yeah. Yeah, this was the super tanker film, Eating Submarines. Stromberg, Roger Moore. Hong Kil-dong. We went to North Korea.
and learned that the Japanese are like the worst people on the planet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, like fucking woman stealing ninjas, all of them.
that was enough.
That was something. Like,
I remember the introduction that you already forgot like a few weeks later, where the ninja is jumping on the rooftops, and then you have this freeze frames where you have the title card, and then it moves on, and then it freezes the frame again.
oh, God damn it, you!
And wonderful
Not funny.
dubbing. Yeah,
And wonderful dubbing.
Pippi in the South Seas. Well, we went to Sweden because that's the best what Sweden has to offer. I remember how it went on forever on that island, and even when Pippi had found the father, it wouldn't move on anywhere. Just Pippi kept on feeding the father to keep the running time even longer.
Yeah, just like this podcast. Maybe Pippi in the South Seas is like the cinematic totem animal of our podcast.
You may be right. The Adopted Son. Yeah, film from Kyrgyzstan. We had 2 guests. We weren't sure if the first guest would be coming on the podcast, so I invited another one just to be on the safe side, and we got both of them and had actually a great time. They guys had a great sense of humor, and we got some of the best replies to the quickies that I've heard on the show. Shenmue the movie, of course.
AKA Console Casual, the movie.
So, yeah, this is a video game that I played in my childhood, and I wanted to see how this would go. This kind of a big experiment. It's basically a movie that really just consists of consequent cutscenes from the video game put together.
AKA a studio-made Makima, pretty much.
And it was shown in Japanese cinemas, selected cinemas.
Yeah, from a game that is so good that... Have you actually played Shenmue 3 yet?
I bought 4K television and PS4 and Shenmue 3 just to play that goddamn game at that moment.
Yeah?
And
You have been awfully quiet about Shenmue 3. I'm sensing that it's such of a good franchise. Like, it's such of a good franchise.
you know, I guess I'm getting old. I didn't finish the game, by the way. I already sold my TV.
Big shocker here. Like,
I already sold my PS4. But I still have Shenmue 3 on my PS account, so I will get back to it in 2030.
yeah, well, if you have to say something nice about the Shenmue, the video game, not the movie, but the game.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you have actually a game where the main character spends like million hours looking for semen?
Yeah, I love those moments. Have you seen any sailors? Are there any sailors around here? Have you seen a black car?
Going to a dock. Have you seen any sailors? Yeah, well, no, you fucking dog.
Going to the vending machine. I like these.
Oh my fucking.
Should I get another one?
No,
Maybe
you.
just another. Or
No, you shouldn't.
And that really drove me crazy in that game, because the most efficient way that there is in the game mechanism to get a hell of a lot of money later in the film is to just keep jerking these vending machines and buying as many of these for your collection as you possibly can. And then in the Shenmue 2, you can sell all of them and finish the game faster. But yeah, okay.
Kari's favorite game, everyone.
Yes. Enough about that. Moonraker.
Yeah, Jesus. That is a movie that exists.
Yeah, episode 56.
The most science fact heavy episode that we have ever done.
Yeah, those are some of the top moments that I remember Mr. Broccoli saying in an interview that this is not science fiction, this is science fact.
But it was kind of once again us getting back to our roots, because I remember to actually finding a calculator and doing the calculations on the terminal velocity that Jaws would achieve when in the beginning of the film when the bastard jumps out of the plane.
Did you really do those calculations?
I honest to God, I did. Like the calculations that I present in the episodes, they are really being done. I'm not pulling the figures out of my ass, except when it comes to Jaws's weight. There I just made a rough estimate, but other than that, it's actually really done calculation.
Bravo, that is background work well done. I think we might have been slacking off a little bit lately, or just have had movies where you just can't do that much research. But yeah, I'm really happy about all of our Bond episodes. These were heavily researched, I think, on everybody's parts.
Yeah, and I do admit now that we have concluded most of the Bond marathon. Like, well, we would have already concluded it, but goddamn, what? No time to waste time.
Yeah,
Well, he has been postponed.
too busy to die.
Yeah. Well, whatever the name was, I can't remember. But anyways, the latest Bond film has been postponed to the, I don't know, next millennium. So.
Yeah.
But up until this point, I actually have been surprised to see exactly how the Bond franchise reads as a franchise, because what you get from Bond as a franchise is completely different experience that you get from Bond as individual movies.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about this on one of these Bond episodes, and I told you that they have been trying to get a fair treatment towards women, but I think we had some kind of a tough argument again.
I honest to God, even today, I don't know about fairer treatment towards women, but
it's like a 2 steps forward and 3 steps backward type of thing.
It is. That's precisely what it is. Like, Bond never actually managed to figure out what it wants to do with its female characters.
Yeah.
But when it comes to character of Bond, I was kind of surprised to notice on a franchise level exactly how condemning the franchise is of Bond himself. Like, the franchise does this really long and drawn out moment, and I'm not certain that it even does it knowingly, but the franchise actually ends up arguing that the Bond is like the most miserable little shitbag that exists, and if you wanna be like Bond, you are really fucking it up, because you should be completely, opposed to what Bond is.
Maybe you're referring more to the Daniel Craig era.
No, I'm actually Daniel Craig era
Pierce
does this.
Brosnan too.
I'm actually referring from George Lazenby to Pierce Brosnan type of time gap, including Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton is the first one where I actually noticed this, and because there is such a long gap from Lazenby to Dalton, it's hard to say if the franchise is kind of conscious on what it's actually saying, or if it's just making the point by accident. But in Timothy Dalton's, what was the friend revenge film, License to Kill? Yeah, in License to Kill, the franchise, at least for me, finally argued that James Bond from Lazenby to License to Kill has been a really miserable sod who just can't enjoy his goddamn life. And then came the Brosnan films, which kind of highlighted that point, kind of made it really in your face. Especially GoldenEye, which had the evil 006. Yeah, whose name was
Alec Trevelyan.
Yeah. Like through Trevelyan, it really kind of makes it clear to you. Trevelyan verbs it out fucking twice throughout the film that James Bond is nothing but a miserable hunk of dead from inside man meat. And then comes Daniel Craig, who does the exact same thing, just in a faster pace.
Yeah, sure, that's something that happened when they became really aware of that they should somehow modernize James Bond when it was the end of the Cold War and it started to, world was changing in many ways and the feminism was on more on top. I guess I wasn't really following the political landscape that closely back in those days, but yeah, it's a very, very self-aware that it should treat the women more nicely. But yeah, once again, it's not quite there in the fair treatment, and I don't know if it has ever been. But like you said, maybe already from on Her Majesty's days, it kind of makes the women look better, and the James Bond mainly as a horrible chunk of old world womanizer character.
Yeah, and it argues that James Bond is miserable. Like the main revelation for me was that the James Bond character is the same character from the beginning of the franchise up until Die Another Day. Like it's supposed to be the same character, same James Bond, even though the actor changes.
Kinda,
but
yeah.
but it still carries the history of that character with it, at least to some point. And from there you get to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where James Bond gets married. He's married for like 15 minutes and then the lady dies and James Bond is really heartbroken. And from there on you actually get... At first it looks like, through individual movies, it appears to be that nothing has changed for Bond. Bond is still just, all about casual sex and beating up bad guys. But then happens the License to Kill, where James Bond... there is the wedding scene with Felix Leiter and James Bond, where they are supposed to... where Felix's wife tosses the silk stocking to Bond. And Bond, who is really well versed in etiquette, should know that this type of situation, which is pretty typical in American weddings and also in Finnish weddings, might appear. Like the bride would throw her stocking at the audience. And Bond, being the close friend of Felix Leiter and Leiter's wife, was kind of on, I would say, the most probable candidate who the wife would throw her stocking. The stocking meaning that Bond would be the next person to marry. So Bond should have been prepared for that moment by all means, how the character makes sense.
I suppose.
And then she throws the stocking and Bond freezes. Like, she can't take it. She's just hold on to this. I can't take it. Goes completely against the character. And Felix makes the point that Bond has lost his wife back in all those years ago. And that kind of means that Bond was never able to let go of her wife that he lost in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which kind of reframes all that free and casual sex that Bond has had after the death of his wife. He hasn't been able to let go of the package, so what does all that sex mean? It doesn't mean that it's just free and casual. Bond is enjoying himself. Obviously he can't, because he's still carrying the memory of his dead wife with him and can't take a fucking silk stocking because of it. So it turns it into a coping mechanism.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And this is emphasized by GoldenEye, which shows Bond actually in contact with a shrink, and Bond being unable to actually anyway open up to a medical professional who is supposed to help him, let the past be and move onwards. And Bond deliberately fucks the situation up, sabotaging the whole situation, just in the end banging up his shrink.
Yeah.
And that just emphasizes that Bond can't talk about, the painful things in his past. He just, buries them all inside. Bond himself says this in GoldenEye, when they have the back and forth with the Bond girl. It's what keeps me alive. It's what keeps you alone. And it's further emphasized by Trevelyan, who even mocks Bond on this remark and makes the question that how many women in your life have you failed, and do you still seek shelter from the
Yeah, about the vodka martinis drowning out the noises of the woman that you
yeah
had some fun with.
yeah and in that film, Alex Trevelyan is the painful past of Bond. He's the friend who betrayed Bond and hurt Bond emotionally. And once again, the only way how Bond can move on is by Trevelyan dying. When Bond kicks Trevelyan in the fucking face, it's like Bond says, it's not for England. It's very much for him. And then you get to Tomorrow Never Dies, where Bond once again is met by another lady from his past. This time it's an ex-flame who once left Bond, and once again, right after Bond meets his ex-flame, he's kind of sour and bitter. And, how could you leave me? I'm angry, sad. And that's the Bond you get. Then the ex-flame gets killed by the bad guys. And on the same fucking scene, or the same moment, you get the scene where Bond is now escaping the bad guys in the parking lot with his, what is the radio controllable car.
Right.
And that's the moment when Bond laughs. Finally, like Bond is finally having fun. It once again, it took the death of the person who had hurt Bond emotionally for Bond to actually find some enjoyment in the situation. That leads into more casual sex with the good guy Bond girl of that film. But it still rings pretty hollow because you are still coming from the Timothy Dalton Bond who made it clear that Bond was unable to let go of the dead woman of his past.
Kind of interesting framing, and you kind of raised the point that every actor that ever kind of portrayed James Bond is kind of very vulnerable to things that are related to not his past but his emotional life.
Yeah, and this is something that kind of happens on fast forward in Daniel Craig films. Daniel Craig films, which once again were supposed to and did reboot the franchise. Like now we are starting from the fresh table, and all the previous Bond package is now behind us. It still does the same thing. But there's the special lady. This time it's Vesper. It once again goes tits up. Vesper dies. Quantum of Solace is essentially Bond trying to have his impotent revenge against the bad guys. He doesn't really manage to do it. Like the bad guys are Quantum Group, and what Bond essentially manages to do is to cause them some financial harm. And that's about it. And then we get to Spectre, where Blofeld is once again rubbing the Vesper to Bond's face. And Bond still hasn't been able to let go of Vesper. And the big ending of that film is...
Turn it off!
Supposed to be, I guess, Bonding moving past Vesper emotionally and finally, thinking that Spectre is the scientist Bond girl as his special someone.
What an interesting way to go about it. You have kind of the ghost of this lady interest, and then she is replaced by the Léa Seydoux character. And it's supposed to be emotionally something of a same vein, but it was built so haphazardly in that film that,
nothing came of it. And I judging by the trailer of the latest one, which is name I still can't remember, but
No Time to Die.
No Time to Die. Judging by the trailer of No Time to Die, I guess the Daniel Craig era of Bond franchise also is acknowledging that the whole love, getting over your past, getting over Vesper, thing of Spectre didn't work, because in the trailers it's now the romance is, at least in my opinion, it's been portrayed as pretty kind of a toxic. Like Bond is once again angry and bitter about Lady leaving him.
I noticed that when we were doing the On Her Majesty's episode, at least you made the point how you felt that it was too slow and the action scenes went on forever, for example, with the skiing. And you felt that it wasn't really doing what you thought it should be doing. Something that would be atypical for a franchise, that it went too overboard. Which I found kind of curious. Then we go to Dalton, and you were completely fine with that. Of course, On Her Majesty's kind of jumps to your face after something like You Only Live Twice, the previous Bond movie with Sean Connery, which also had pretty great cinematography, locations, and production values. But On Her Majesty's didn't try to do anything that You Only Live Twice was, or the next, for that matter, Diamonds Are Forever, directed by Guy Hamilton again, of the Goldfinger fame. Goldfinger already showed you that the Bond was going with Hamilton to a more to the laughs direction, to more campy direction, with all those gadgets that were taking most of the screen time, and the jokes, of course. But On Her Majesty's, I felt, tried to really be some kind of even an art movie. In a sense, it takes a lot of time to build up the characters. Even many of the side characters, Moneypenny, M, they get way more screen time, and they are kind of important part of the plot. The cinematography is top notch there, and it's more like a melodrama, whereas it's a complete 180 tonal shift when we get to Diamonds Are Forever. This might, of course, kind of feel unnatural to you, that it does this kind of a jumping. And apart from the crazy plots about virus Omega, where trying to, spread this virus that is going to cause complete infertility around the world, if Blofeld's demands are not met, that's crazy. But I thought even just the locations and the human elements were so good that it rises way above from the Bond movies for me.
Yeah,
But
could be. My hard to remember. I haven't rewatched On Her Majesty's
Me
since
neither.
we did the episode, and I don't watch Bond movies that often altogether. I am not really that familiar with Bond universe, but something that may have actually been my biggest problem with On Her Majesty's is the fact that I kind of felt that tonally the movie was all over the place. So like you had that slow burning serious spy action juxtaposed against the hell of a long action scenes. So like when they are escaping the ski troops.
But it's even more kind of it feels even more rewarding when you have been watching this slow melodrama for 40 minutes, and then it kind of kicks in with John Barry and the guns blazing.
On my end, I was kind of disappointed by, I guess, with the action scenes and the more outlandish aspects of that film. And I kind of felt that it was taking a step backwards when it came to the action scenes and the big action set pieces and the virus Omega, which was completely bafflingly stupid plot from Blofeld once again, and almost cartoon levels. It was the plot of Blofeld was something out of a Moonraker, I would say.
And kind of underwhelming, because his whole goal was just to get amnesty for his past crimes, and that was
Yeah.
all. Like, really? This time it's going to be reward, or the demands are going to be bigger than ever. And I think all it ever amounted in that film was to get that amnesty. Maybe there was something else, but it was never told.
Yeah, maybe he also wanted like $100 million or something.
Oh, and that.
Oh, and that.
Yeah.
And I was also somewhat troubled by the. Well, once again, talking about the juxtaposition of the film, but there's like serious stuff, like Bond's wife dying at the very end of the film, which is juxtaposed just previous shots, which is really comically bad shot of Blofeld with his neck brace driving the car. No, it was the old granny henchman driving the car. And Blofeld is like holding some machine gun. Like, now I'm gonna get you, you dastardly Bond. It was kind of like, oh my god.
Yeah.
There goes the emotional reaction, guys.
I guess I can see that. The problem with me is that I'm wired a bit differently towards these films because I've been watching them since age 6, so I would have to live another life to see this in a different light. I guess that's enough about Bond, but we had number 57 episode, Sugarcane Alley, one of our perhaps most well-read guests in this episode. A film from Martinique. We had a guest, Sebastien, and he actually did own a sugarcane plantation on the island. And we all quite liked the film. Henrik wasn't completely blown away.
It's also that one time when we got called out by the industry itself. Or at least someone tied to the industry.
Yeah, so he claimed, that he was a friend of the directors. That was a lengthy reply to our Sugarcane Alley post on Facebook.
Yeah. To that commenter, still, even today, the offer stands. You know, if you wanna get into the Finnish film festivals with Sugarcane Alley, just contact us and we see what we can do.
Can we do anything?
Well, we can at least try to advocate the film
can.
to the Finnish film festivals.
Sure.
At least to some of them, like the International Film Festival of Helsinki might be a bit out of our reach, but we can at least try to get the film to Sodankylä. And that's a pretty big film festival also. It's the only one that got supported now by, through streaming services by the Finnish broadcasting station Yle. Night Vision didn't get that treatment. Helsinki Film Festivals altogether didn't get that treatment, but Sodankylä was supported by the Finnish broadcasting.
That would be great. That would be great to do what you've been suggesting. It's great that you have these Harry Saltzmanish ideas. Like, what can we do to be more known, and what kind of festivals would we be able to get to talk about our podcast, or if we could follow kind of a calendar of some film theater or festival and then do the podcast episodes based on that calendar that they have.
Hasn't worked out yet, but there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, we did number 58, The Matrix.
That was a hell of a long background work, and that was a fucking Hollywood film. So goes to show you how much we can actually ease out our background work with by picking Hollywood films.
Yeah, I remember reading at least one book in preparation for that, and not sure how much that actually helped, or
at least it's confused it more.
At least it made for more fighting material. We couldn't quite agree on anything there.
No.
Or it's like maybe I also pointed that perhaps we did agree on a lot of things, but we were just talking about the same things in a different way. Taekogi, the first show where we had our guest Lee there. This was a South Korean student guy, and I just happened to notice that he was Korean according to what he was talking on the phone or whatever he was doing there in a coffee shop, and I just went to him, are you Korean? Yeah. Do you want to be in our podcast? more or less, it went like that. Great guy. The problem with this film was that I didn't really find the golden points for this, what we should be talking about in this episode. But yeah, we got some interesting background about the Korean War and what Lee's thoughts were on it.
Yeah, it's a problem with weekly podcast that every now and then you land upon on a film, and the film might even sound really great in your head. Like I also had this experience. I was once suggesting that we should have watched the Finnish film My Brother's Keeper, which is about Finnish rapper Cheek and
Oh,
he's terrible music.
It was in our calendar at one point, but then I just couldn't take it. I had to remove it.
Yeah, and good riddance, because rethinking that it was a good idea only in my head and nothing usable. But we every now and so often since this is a weekly product, we do land upon on these films where we have the idea that yeah, this is really good film to talk about. Like we have all of these venues that we can find, and then all of a sudden we realize that no, we can't. And then we are kind of scraping the surface, like what can we talk about in relation with this movie? What is the big discussion we can have through this movie?
Yeah, there is a lot of films that we could talk about that are not of the highest quality, but it would be like more fun to talk about. Maybe Veljeni Vartija, Brother's Keeper. Why not?
Because absolutely fucking no one would be interested to hear about a film about Finnish rapper. But talking about films that are not necessarily highest of quality, our next film in this podcast, Never Say Never Again.
Never say never.
Jesus Christ, what a train wreck.
Yeah, this was a Thunderball remake. And the only reason Sean Connery said yes to it was clearly just to give a finger from the middle to the original producers of the Eon Bond franchise, Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman. I suppose for multitude of reasons, he really hated the guts of Harry Saltzman. In one interview, he said that Albert R. Broccoli is the best Bond villain. And that it's a pretty good one. And he said that he never got enough money from the franchise. He did this one deal. Was it like a 5-movie deal when they started with Dr. No? And then they were constantly making improvements on his contract, like giving some bonuses or some proportion of the revenue of the films, like Thunderball, was it? But he felt that he was always kind of cheated out of the big money. That now that the franchise had gotten extremely huge after Goldfinger, and he just couldn't quit the project. He was tied to these 5 films, and once the 5 films was up, he was so full of all the media attention and the apparently crappy pay and the feeling that he got cheated, and so he was out. And he said that he would never do another Bond film, and then he returned for Diamonds Are Forever for that 1 million unheard sum of money which he donated to charity. Like, and then he did this piece of art. And even during this production, he got into problem with the producers, and he said something to the vein that these guys are amateurs and he will never work with them again.
Something which does not show up in the film at all.
Yeah.
It might be one of the least interested performances by Connery himself.
Yeah. Well, Sean Connery will be apparently really hard to work with if he decides that some people are, in his opinion, unprofessional. But there are certain directors, Sidney Lumet, and he got along fine with him.
Yeah. Well, that's the scotch for you. That is the reason why the only way I take my scotch is in bottle.
Episode 61, Yellen, yeah.
Yeah, that was a doozy.
That
The episode that they took 1 week longer to produce because we were still doing background work
Yeah.
when we were originally supposed to record it.
One of those rare occasions where we had to skip 1 week of recording entirely, if I remember, because I was looking at the film first, and in the first 5 minutes they burn a living chicken, and I was like, blink, blink. Contacted Henrik and said that I think we're gonna need additional week for this one. The Terminator. Yeah, we approached this in an interesting fashion. We did the Terminator 2 episode first, and then we got to the Terminator.
Yeah, because that's how chronology works.
Yeah, well, and the Terminator, we did this around the release of the Dark Conspiracy Fate. Whatever is it?
Something that we were supposed to check out in the theaters.
Were we?
Yes, that was on table, if I remember correctly, at some point.
That wasn't on my cards, as
Okay.
far as I remember. And good riddance for that idea, because I saw it. And did you?
No, I haven't checked it out.
Yeah.
I also haven't checked out Joker yet, which also I don't know, might be good material for this podcast.
If you want to hear me complaining about it for 3 hours, then yes.
I'm kind of a carefully hopeful with that film.
63, we did the Wish from a listener, from Łukasz, from Poland, the Death Wish movie.
Oh my god.
And I had some pretty good laughs about the absurdity of that film. It's almost like camp.
It is, but unfortunately, it's not good camp. It's really slow. I don't do fucking nothing camp.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not Bruce Willis level camp.
No, and it's not like cheap B movie camp either, where the whole thing gets so blown out of proportions that it becomes kind of a miracle on itself to just see all the crazy dimensions the film goes on. This is more of, the whole film just repeating the same goddamn basic premise, which is that there's a thug with a knife, and then Charles Bronson has a gun. So who would win the fight? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's like a movie who wants to be more artsy than it actually is. Just to get some of the feelings from the episode, I might just play the beginning of it, because it's quite well captures what's going on.
I'm sorry. We have a Charles Bronson here running around with his tough face and not giving a fuck about the opposition at any point.
Yeah. Best regards to Lucas,
He must have been like, yeah, not my episode. The Blue Light. Yeah, we had a semi-little celebrity from Finland, Daiki-san, who is a Japanese guy, obviously, and he moved to Finland, and he's writing a blog about it even to this day, and he's quite active on Twitter with some interested Finns there discussing life in Finland with him, and in Japan as it happens. That was fun. It's something that I watched when I was a teenager, and a bunch of those Asian collection something lineup of films on DVD. Very, very, very hard to find, and I quite enjoyed it.
It's an okay piece of a thriller film. It was an okay of an episode.
Yeah, it was a fun episode. Yeah, got a lot of help from Daiki there. I know it's been a while. Episode 64. Yeah, enjoyable thriller. Part of our International Cinema Challenge. But then there was The Living Daylights.
Porn film that didn't, which was pretty damn good, even though it didn't completely know what it wanted to be.
Yeah, it was like even though they already they weren't writing the script for Roger Moore, as far as my sources go, but it still had some of that Roger Moore campy humor there that wasn't quite working. Amazing, this modern safety glass and all that jazz in the ice chase, which is the weakest part of the film.
Pretty much, yeah.
But it's a really romantic film, I feel. Even though these two lead characters are coming from completely different worlds, and the lady is kind of ignorant of the big world. Now Bond just pulls her into it. But at the same time, I think the lady gets the hang of it pretty quickly, in a way that she is really independent there in Afghanistan, driving that jeep, and finally gets into the plane. I like her.
You have to
I like
be
her way.
an independent if you are a woman. In Afghanistan, when Bond decides to join the fucking Taliban, so
Yeah, that happened.
those were the days. Like 80s were a crazy decade when it came to film. Everybody was joining the Taliban. Like Rambo joined the Taliban, and I'm certain that Schwarzenegger joins Taliban in some film. No, Schwarzenegger did Red Heat, which was crazy robotic Soviets, the action film.
Oh god.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's pretty much the only time that the James Bond franchise got quite political. The first time that they do this, they kind of messed it up in retrospect.
in retrospective, maybe not the best move.
But one of the best movies for me, it's the entire long Timothy Dalton 2 movie run is really solid still, all things considered. The Promised Land, yeah, we got back our guest Magda Hutny from Poland to help us out. One of those Polish classic films, which I thought ultimately was not terribly interesting in the cinematography or even storytelling. It was kind of documentary-esque and kind of lukewarm.
It was kind of an interesting experience as a movie. But it was at times it was really heavy and political and good, and then on the other times it went completely like insane
Yeah.
with what happened in the movie and also with some of its cinematography. It's a really mixed bag as a film.
It is, and if you ever visit Łódź, then you will get more out of it. But other than that, maybe only if you're a film buff, then it's kind of one of your responsibilities from Poland. 67 uninvited. We thought that we needed to change the tune. This was the first episode ever where we didn't have a solid scene by scene. We didn't go scene by scene, where we were jumping around throughout the episode, and that kind of freed up the discussion, and I feel that maybe we could do it even more often. And I've been telling to Henrik that even sometimes that we could completely annihilate the scene by scene idea. But then again, I think I still kind of like it too much. I mean, we get to talk about everything on this green earth about the film when we go through the scene by scene. But this was a movie that really didn't demand a scene by scene.
It was. It was a film that for first time for quite some time, the recording started with me opening a beer and just being like, fuck it.
Oh yeah, that was a long time coming. Since we had, I don't know if you had any alcohol since the Halloween films.
No, I actually been sticking strictly to water and tea on this podcast ever since the Halloween experience until the uninvited.
Yeah, 68. The gods must be crazy. South African film. Yeah, we got Matt from South Africa to provide his views. This was a tricky one to crack, and thank goodness we had a guest. Due to the local humor, you kind of had to, it's kind of slapstick, and I had a hard time understanding why it would be as funny as people tell me it is. And I think it might have been funnier in 1980. I didn't think that I found any kind of a racist tones in it or playing with anything like that, even though it has the app originals. I just thought that it wasn't funny.
Yeah, racism and this podcast is something that you know has a long first, I guess a second half because
We like to steer far away from
yeah we don't wanna like touching any easily flammable topics for doing this podcast.
yeah, Poles and Catholicism, homosexuals, and License to Kill as our 69th episode. There's nothing really to be added here. It's one of my favorite James Bond films. No doubt. Always hoped that Timothy Dalton would have done more Bond films. Even wished for the guy to just take over the entire 90s of Bond films, but fate had other ideas. The Unknown Soldier 1955, the first Tuntematon sotilas film from Finland. We've been kind of talking that maybe we could get back to that sort of a franchise of remakes, maybe for the next Independence Day, if we feel like it.
If we feel like it. And the trick with the Unknown Soldier is that if you are Finn or you have Finnish listeners, the Unknown Soldier is somewhat it's held, especially the original, the Edwin Laine 1955 film is held in such of a high regard. It's almost like a holy relic. The film that it gets even somewhat dangerous to talk about it because every Finn or at least a Finnish Satamehead will automatically like have a score with you if you say anything negative about the movie.
I like the film. Very well made.
It's a good film. It's one of the better films that Finnish film industry has pushed out.
You could say that. But seems that Finns are not too excited about this on our YouTube page, but it's like a weird split of the likes and dislikes on our but that's kind of I suppose
That's the whole YouTube page. Right?
that's the YouTube experience. Especially when you have only audio and still pictures. I guess that's what you get. Hellbound Hellraiser 2, 71th episode. This was recorded way before, but this happened to be somehow the optimal time to release it. It was in the shelves for a long time, and I really didn't quite feel even releasing this because I knew that I think our listeners were sick of these horror franchises. But we had to do it at some point. We started this whole thing in preparation for our big break after the Christmas, creating episodes for the bank. Solid sequel. Come and See, 1985. This was a tour de force film from Russia. A story that you don't really hear that often. The German attack on Belarusian forests during the Second World War. And obviously released as our Yuletide episode.
Yeah, it was one hell of a movie. I must admit.
Okay, even you who has kind of seen everything and is not impressed by anything anymore. That's cool.
Yeah, it was. It was. I really enjoyed the way how it emphasized the sound of war. Like the running thematic to me in Come and See was how does the war sound like to the people experiencing it, and it did some really kind of it did some really experimental stuff with its sound design, like when the bikes motorbikes of the German troops are approaching the village, and the first thing you kind of hear is the bikes, and you just follow the sound of the bikes before you even have a clear visual on what's actually happening in the scene.
And even with the shots or the way that it was told from a first person perspective at times, which you, funnily enough, I don't think you even kind of paid attention to that on your viewing. Like you could have the view of the boy looking straight into the eyes of this girl who was also in the forest.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of breaking the fourth wall in a way.
kind of. And then everybody uploads the fucking Doom movie for being in first person, somehow being groundbreaking because of the first person perspective.
Oh, okay. I personally haven't even seen that.
Yeah, you haven't missed anything.
Thought so.
GoldenEye,
episode 73. Oh yes, we had the special guest here. We had Tom Franklin and Matt Spicer from the Suits of James Bond, now called Bond Suits. So thanks a lot for that. This just goes to show how much we need experts on this podcast.
it does, and it goes to show exactly how kind of a wide range of experts you have out there.
Yeah, it's like an endless way of talking about films.
Yup. Like who could have actually thought that guy who makes essentially a fashion blog actually would have so much to say about a movie?
Yeah, fascinating views.
It is.
We got to the 74th episode, Cinema Challenge 2019 wrap up. We had our super fan Haley Sundstrom, and we were basically just going through all the films that we watched in the Cinema Challenge, the 20 films. What about that? That was a fun, quite free-flowing conversation.
It was such a free flowing discussion that it went off the rails at times. It was just us talking about the fucking podcast structure and
Yeah, where's our guest? Are you still here?
Yeah, Heli being there, like, oh my fucking god, I'm wasting my life. Apologies for that, Heli.
Yeah, she is still listening. Even went through this on Chandelu episode. She was first checking, like, did I start this episode from some wrong part? Then she realized what's going on. She gave me some kind of creative feedback about it. It was just like a 2-second clip, and you can't even really explain it. Like, the same thing goes for the film. The feedback was like a 2-second clip where there was some animal, and on the other side of the screen you would see her hitting some metallic objects.
Oh my god. Fuck, that's creative. Look,
That was great.
that is. But that kind of wraps up this if we once again think these as seasons, and this would be like the season 2 of the podcast. The season 1 was the godly amount of technical problems and me changing the mic every episode, and that's a sound just being completely off half the time. Then the season 2 would be kind of the edgy, emo, experimental phase of this podcast where we do all this crazy stuff, and you at times really, I think, really hit the mark and reach for the code when it comes to being experimental and trying new stuff. And I don't know, maybe now in season 3 we can finally actually get good.
Right. It's been a long journey growing up. Like, yeah, episode 1 to 50 there were technical problems and sound quality issues here and there, but also there was a lot of passion. And after 50 episodes, maybe there were moments where we got a little bit exhausted, but we started to get more professional, I suppose, in the structure and how we do it.
It is. It's kind of a. I never actually noticed this myself as a podcast listener or as a follower of any YouTube channel, but now as a podcast producer, I actually do notice how these things, like these products, like this podcast essentially is, they kind of carry with them the growing pains of the project.
Yeah.
Like now looking back to what we have the past 99 episodes, I can actually clearly see how we have changed and shape up. Not just only as a podcast, but also as a podcast hosts. And how the way how we try to do the episodes and how we approach film has changed as we have done more and more of this stuff. We have gotten more out of the the culturally analytical, like, how do you like this mask? How is the character walking in the scene? Early days, and we are not so heavily anymore plagued by audio issues. But now we have been more experimental and going more crazy with our stuff, and also the podcast itself is kind of changing constantly. Like these days, we are more about not so much about the scene by scene necessarily. We are more about the heavy topics that we can find and address through the picture that we are watching.
Yeah, I think the direction is correct. That we have overemphasized maybe the structure of scene by scene, going through every single scene like slaves, even if there's nothing to talk about those
Yeah.
particular scenes really. Well, I mean, we can talk for hours, but there's really not always something to talk about. But so that we now try to concentrate on those more interesting points, the points kind of special to that particular movie that we should actually talk about. And the same goes for the quickies. We don't really care that much about the quickies anymore. We're just-
No, the quickies actually have been a clusterfuck for the past episodes for quite some time.
It has, and I've noticed that you haven't really paid attention to that part anymore, and
No,
neither have I.
Yeah, there are some questions from the quickies which I still do actually think about, and where I do pay attention.
Yeah.
But something with the quickies is that the quickies themselves have transformed into this kind of a cacophony of crazy shit where we forgot one category, and then it gets brought back, and then we invent new quickies, and then we forget them and this is not usable material, and it just kind of makes the fucking nightmare at times. At least with certain categories, like the first shot that comes to mind, which
We already dumped that.
we already dumped that, but we kept a random confusing question which was supposed to be the bridge to the first shot that comes to mind. Like, the fuck? And the best your favorite shot, which we dumped and then brought back and then dumped again and brought back again, and at this point I'm not even paying attention. Like, I'm just calling some shit from the film and being like, yeah, that's me. For the longest time I was actually escaping the whole question by letting you go first, and then I was it's the same shot.
I noticed. Maybe I should finally, after trying for 1.5 years to send you the latest list of the quickies, we can go with the same ones. But yeah, what really counts for me is what makes the movie special. Let's talk about that. And
Yeah,
let's just-
same here.
yeah.
Same here. To me, it's I do understand kind of the merit of the quickies from the podcast host perspective. Like the quickies at their best, they can be a tool for us to for one final time in that episode revisit the film and give ourselves kind of a structure, like
Yeah.
what to pay attention in this given film.
But for example, when we get to films or analysis like, my God, On Her Majesties, that was some of the best analysis that we have had in the podcast. We went through it all. There's nothing possibly anymore left to say. even we went through those, which I'm really proud of. Those we kind of came up with these during the moment, like the 4 biggest failures of Bond at the clinic. That was some brilliant stuff. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with this, but yeah, concentrate on those key points more. And I feel that we have been selecting films that we definitely would not have selected in the beginning of the podcast or even the first 50 podcasts now.
No.
For example, well, we went for first one, we went to Rear Window, which is of course a big classic, but now we're doing some crazy shit like Chicken Vindaloo, Unchandaloo, or what else have we been doing?
Well,
French New Wave.
Yeah.
So-
Springer,
Right.
which is less than a minute
Right.
as a film. We did have these is like reaching the high bar episodes where we were really upping the ante. But usually during the first 50 episodes, the upping the ante happened through us, by us approaching more heavily loaded topics and getting more and more versed in political questions. Like, for example, the Village Pretty Flame.
Oh god.
Yup, which was really big reach for us because that was a minefield to approach. Like, how do you talk about still quite recent civil war
Yeah.
and not be disrespectful to any given side, and still trying to uphold your take on the fact that some of the stuff that these guys did was really shitty
Mm.
and was terrible and was a crime against humanity, and still not come off like you are sitting on your
Any
high
side.
horse and waving an easy attack on someone and just claiming good guy scores, but trying to be neutral and simply looking at the situation from an as neutral perspective as possible.
And trying to really understand the conflict and speak about it in a perfectly understandable and correct way, and respecting your guest, all of those things for 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
That was a minefield.
That was, and we when it comes to artistry and aesthetics, we also there were some films where really were trying to do this, but altogether when it comes to it kind of comes to being more experimental as a podcast artistry wise, I would say this is that the past 50 episodes now have been really the time when we have more played with the structure of podcast
Yeah.
and what you can actually do in an episode when you are doing a film podcast.
Yeah, growing up, in other words. And so I see the structure itself as kind of a guide, which you are supposed to be breaking every now and then. Die Another Day, episode 75. Well, we have said what we have said about that one, and that was unfortunately really lackluster, in lack of a better term, for the run of Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. Too bad he didn't get his 5th run, but then again we got Daniel Craig. Episode 76, Hellraiser 3. Well, all yours. It's one of those. I think it's kind of good that we went through it to kind of. This was still interesting as an episode to do, to explain how and why the entire franchise then fell.
Yep. Yeah, when it comes to franchise wise, Hellraiser 3 is kind of a it's an interesting film because that's the downward slope
Yeah.
starts. When it comes to Hellraiser, maybe something, and this is once again, this is one of those situations I mentioned where the idea sounds good in your head, but you're not sure if it really would make a good episode. But maybe Hellraiser 4.
Really?
It's there's a like once again, sounds good in my head,
Yeah.
but when it comes to Hellraiser 4, it's one of those cases where the studio meddling kind of really fucked over the film. And there is kind of the second film which never got released. And there are hints in the released cut of the movie to that film and the larger mythos and the larger themes it's going to play. And those themes are, to me, really interesting. That being said, would it necessarily make a good episode? Perhaps not, because that's a point that can be addressed pretty early and pretty quickly. And then maybe the next, or the rest of the episode would just, us being like, there's nothing more to talk about. Let's just end this quickly.
I once flashed you the idea that would there be any point of kind of breaking the episode structure once again in a way that we would talk about all the Hellraiser sequels in one big episode? Just run through them in a way, in a kind of a free flow conversation instead of scene by scene.
Yeah,
Or then we do just some kind of a smaller episodes without scene by scene.
for the longest time, I've actually dreaded that prospect and doing an episode like that, because that would be like watching a hell of a lot of films and necessarily doing the background for those films also, so that you can understand why what happens in the film happens. But now that we have done the Bond franchise, and I had to realize, acknowledge and admit that a franchise can read completely differently when you look at it as a franchise than when you look at it as an individual films. Maybe, yeah. Like when it comes to the downfall of Hellraiser, I do think there really is some interesting topics to talk about. Because the downfall is, honest to God, the downfall of Hellraiser franchise is something to behold, because it comes from greatness to like really rock bottom rat shit awful, and your fan, like as a fan of the franchise, I myself have to I've been forced to kind of transform from a fan of this really great thing into the fan who just takes more and more abuse, and I'm just grateful that this time it didn't hurt as much as the previous time. So please you didn't hit me so hard.
It's like having the right tools but using them wrongly. It's always interesting to discuss about. Same goes for Halloween. 77th episode, Gone with the Wind. This was some direction that I was completely kind of oblivious about, in a way that I had not seen the film. Of course, I've always heard about the film, but I just felt that this is not something on my agenda. But it's a classic film, so we delved deep into it. Goes like 3 hours, or what is it? And we had surprisingly maybe different views about the whole marital rape. Or
we did like we did Gone with the Wind, and then we never escaped the shadow of it. Like the marital rape and the garbage baggers scene kind of just keeps on creeping into this episode every now and then in the discussions.
Yeah, that was great. And we went to Parasite, had some newer production in the podcast for a change, directed by Bong Joon-ho. For this one we went to the theater, and I went to the Polish cinema with Polish subtitles twice to see it, because I just felt like it, even though it's kind of... But it's, as I stated out, it's quite easy to follow what is happening there, regardless of what your language level in Polish might be.
Yeah, the second time in our history that we have done actually a theater run film while it's on theater.
Yeah, that is because you need a mortgage for watching films.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, I dropped the bonus episode Kinokameralne Cafe interview with Piero. This is from the time when we desperately tried to fill our quota of episodes before we went to our December-January break.
I did try to take part in this episode. I was
Yeah.
I was in a train traveling from Asend of Lapland to Helsinki back then.
Okay.
I was physically on the train and I was trying to get on the air. We were in Discord with Kari and my connection just kept on cutting off constantly and the audio was shit and Kari couldn't hear what I was saying and then I dropped off online because once again, as end of Lapland, so of course the connections are worth of shit.
And to add to the insult, this was a cellar level theater. So, but I was connected to the Wi-Fi of that building, but still something kept happening. I think I got disconnected. Awful mess. But yeah, this is the first episode where you are not part of the episode. But it was a bonus episode, so no biggie.
Yeah, and it is an interesting episode in the sense that this is an interview.
Yeah.
Like this isn't our typical here's a film, enjoy the recap type of stuff, but this is us actually or you in this case actually reaching out to someone just for to have the interview and really shining a light onto someone.
Yeah. Different way of approaching it. Ultimately, we didn't release this even during this December-January time. This got like, I don't know, almost 2 months of delay or what? But it got finally released when I felt that it was the moment. And we could do more of those in some way. We would just need more of your money, dear listener. 79th episode, Casino Royale. Daniel Craig's entry to the franchise. Go listen to that if you're interested. 81st episode, Coriolanus 2011. This was a great one from Henrik. One of those few Henrik selections. And we have the modern day actor of M, Ray Fiennes, acting as the Coriolanus, a modern adaptation of William Shakespeare's play. I really, really love this movie.
Yeah, an episode which was done purely to show our audiences that I actually have read something.
Well done there. Jurassic Park, 82nd episode. This is once again one of those classic film episodes where we just thought that the best way to approach this is just to find interesting, different looking glasses into the material that we're witnessing. Like, for example, talking about Nedry and how he was able to go there and be so stupid with that jeep and dying in the process.
Yeah.
And how the goats are delivered to T-Rexes.
Yeah. Also a franchise that might actually merit from a franchise retrospective and being covered more at some time. Because also when it comes to Jurassic Park as a franchise, it kind of goes into a baffling mess as you go on.
Those are always interesting. We have started so many franchises here that we have material to continue with.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yup. The only downside is that after Halloween, we both have been kind of careful never again to really try to do the whole franchise.
It's never gonna happen again. And as our number 83 episode, we went through our latest Bond film to discuss the Spectre from 2015.
Yeah, a film that doesn't take 3 hours to explain what the hell is wrong with it.
No, 5 hours.
5 hours.
And we cut it to 3. There was user feedback about it. It doesn't take 3 hours to talk about it. You're right. It takes more.
Yeah, you're just lucky that you got the 3-hour version.
One of our best episodes. We went through everything, I feel. And it was a particularly tough one to kind of break down why it is such of a mess that it is.
It was like I still remember the work that you had to do try to understand why this doesn't work.
Yeah. I had to take an extra day actually to kind of break it down.
Yup. Because on a surface level, when you see it, your brain kind of tells you that this
Nothing's
should,
working.
this should be great.
Mm.
And at the same time, you have the nagging voice in the beginning of your head telling you that no, this is dog shit.
Yeah. The biggest part, which was kind of a shock for me in the theater, is that it it goes into this Austin Powers level of cliches. For some reason, it could have avoided them perfectly.
So easily.
Yeah. And the whole plotline about the kind of not really a blood relationship, but this adopted child relationship.
Yeah. It was me all along, Mr. Pod. Oh.
And a kind of a miscast or misrepresented Blofeld.
Yep.
Number 84, Jeepers Creepers.
that was like the whole episode worth of child molestation jokes.
Yeah, I kept thinking during edit, is this gonna work out? Can we leave this in? But, well, we're talking about a child molester, so let's just go ahead. We did throw a lot of punches there, I have to say, and rightfully so.
Still, when it comes to throwing punches, one of our maybe easiest films to target about, because when it comes to the director of when it comes to Jeepers Creepers, nobody anymore gives a shit about Jeepers Creepers.
Or the director.
Yeah, so easy target there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a ever since Jeepers Creepers, I've actually been asking myself the question: how would we actually feel, and how would we be able to pull it off when and if we would be approaching a film from a really problematic filmmaker that is really good? Like if we would be talking about
Roman
Polanski, for example, a Roman Polanski feature, what would that be like? Because once again, Jeepers Creepers was an easy target to attack, and Victor Salva an easy mark. Like you can just throw punches, because really, who remembers Jeepers Creepers? Fucking nobody. But Roman Polanski has done some really excellent, like fucking masterpiece level films, and he still like it's not official because the asshole escaped the sentencing.
Prosecution.
Yeah, prosecution. But most likely the director is a really horrible person, or you know, something like Quentin Tarantino or Stanley Kubrick, the directors who reportedly have been, well, not sexually assaulting, but other ways abusing both physically and mentally their actors on the set. Kubrick being really notorious for this one. So once again, how do you approach it? How do you reconcile with the fact that you may really like the film and loathe the man behind it, or even really appreciate and love the man as a professional, as a director, but then at the same time having to acknowledge that outside of that he might be a monster.
This is where you need to, at least in my opinion, you have to take this kind of a split brain approach. Unfortunately, it will drive you crazy, but you need to kind of respect what he has done artistically, and then just, if you know what you're talking about regarding the allegations, then go ahead and talk about it. But I would be really careful about the Roman Polanski, at least at this point. I would need to do a full-on research about it before I want to open my mouth.
Yep. It is tricky waters, but it's also an interesting question as a like pop culture consumer.
Yeah,
Like how do you reconcile with those two realities?
it's tricky. Yeah,
It's tricky.
having these Roman Polanski movies on your shelves and then
Yeah, and going back to them and thinking about maybe he raped a minor. Like
yeah, Let's put it on.
Yeah, let's put it on. Let's go Chinatown.
Number 85, The Little World of Don Camillo. Don Camillo, excuse me. In Italy, you pronounce it as LL Camillo. And in Spanish, that would be, I guess, Camillo.
Well, then again, that's me and foreign languages.
But you did get it right. So, The Little World of Don Camillo. One of those Henrik films, and one of those. This started the Italian-French direction of our podcast.
Well, the rest is completely your fault.
Well, you provided this gem, and I had to play with the idea. And, well, we went to number 86 Cinema Paradiso, and one of those Italian-French co-productions once again. An absolute classic film that had a gazillion of versions. Definitely recommended for our listeners. And then went to Moulin Rouge, our first musical in the podcast. That took some time. I'm still not gonna do La La Land, by the way.
You maybe Rent. It has gays and AIDS because homos has AIDS, you know.
I'm gonna skip all of those movies from now on. That's like 95% of movies with gays. Yeah, let's see.
But yeah, musicals are an interesting beast to tackle movie-wise because they kind of operate on the logic of their own.
Yeah, it's like a artistic beast. Throw the logic to the bin. 88th episode, Nobody Knows. Daremo Shiranai. Here we had a Japanese guest, Sho Watanabe from Japan. We had some disagreements about how to approach this film and whether it took the right direction by kind of not really following the original case, but kind of being only based on it and perhaps suffering as by doing this approach. Episode 89, Cozy Dance, Peiliski. Once again, we had a local guest. This was a Czech Republic comedy, which actually I think you can enjoy, even if you don't really know the background of the war or the conflict. Episode 90, Breathless. We went to the French New Wave.
Yeah, because someone had a bright idea.
That was from the easier end. I started to look at the other films of Jean-Luc Godard, and I was like, holy crap.
I still remember my first time when I saw La Weekend from Godard.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't even remember which one was it of those films that I bought from Godard, but it's a big work in progress. First 5 minutes in, and wait, do I actually need to process what was said or just let it flow? Episode 91, we went to Russia once again. We've been going a lot to Slavic territory, and we did get Tom Franklin back for the episode. We had kind of a bit of a deal with him that we would do some episode outside of the Bondosphere later with him, so we did. And he did great research on that one, and it was well done. Then we went to short films on 92, A Trip to the Moon. I was kind of hesitant about it, and I wasn't sure if this is going to fit our format, whether we want to do this at all. But then again, why not? At first, my idea was to maybe go through 3 different short films, because they are short films in one episode, but ultimately, you were right, because we spent like 2 hours talking about A Trip to the Moon.
Yep.
So we went only with 1 movie per episode. And it's going to be something that we're going to keep on the podcast, I think, every 1 per month. 93, No Man's Land. Yeah, we had to balance it out after Pretty Village, Pretty Flame. We went to Bosnia to check out a similar film to Pretty Village, Pretty Flame. The Bosnian War conflict has been now buried for now, as we have tackled a Serbian and a Bosnian film about it.
Until we once again dig it up.
Until we go to a Croatian version of this.
I actually have been meaning to bring up the topic that we should also cover a Croatian film about about the conflict.
Yeah. What's next? The Croatian transsexual society version of the conflicts and their feelings and documentaries about the conflict. And when will it end? When is it enough?
It's never enough. I fear.
Henrik feels so apologetic about even approaching this whole conflict in the podcast. Episode 94, Corpus Christi, Boże Ciało. We went to Poland for the Oscar nominee film, and we released it on the day of Corpus Christi. It was kind of topical, I felt. A director that we had not touched upon before. Episode 95, Time to Hunt, 2020. One of our newest films in the podcast, once again, from the director Jon Sung-hyun.
That's the first Netflix pick that we have had.
It is. And even though we were talking about watching more stream service films from now on, we haven't exactly done that. Although Anshandaloo is online, I'm not quite sure if it's in the public domain, but you can definitely see it if you want online. So Time to Hunt, this was a fun film. It just is plain fun. We haven't had a lot of fun in this podcast lately, and this was just some crazy 2 hours to spend your time, relax, and just get rid of your brain cells and go for it.
And this coming from the guy who didn't appreciate zombie strippers, everybody. Says something. I'm not saying what. I'm saying what, but it says something.
Well, this goes both ways. This is a guy who appreciates zombie strippers, but not so much Time to Hunt at points. Our brains do flips every now and then.
Well,
Double standard brains.
In my defense, Zombie Strippers is actually the film that made even you appreciate the teach of Jenna Jameson. So, it speaks volumes about the power that film can have.
Yeah, that happened. An Andalusian dog. More famous, I guess, by the title that I've said like 5 times already. Anshandaloo. That was fun.
It was the most experimental that we have ever been.
Editing wise as well. Don't know if you have listened to it, probably not.
Nope. It's still the fact that I only really rarely and really occasionally revisit anything that I've ever, participated myself in.
But that would be the growing process, right? Like going back to it and then hearing like, maybe this wasn't quite good, and maybe I can improve here, or maybe I should quit the podcast.
It could be. I'm kind of doing it as we record, but I don't know. Maybe it could work as or serve as a growing process to me.
Like if I would go by the experience in this podcast only from the recording experience, then I would have probably ended this podcast in the episode 7. But by listening to this episode, I find that it's actually better than what I felt during the recording. But everybody has a different experience. Not sure how you feel during the recordings. That's good. You can multitask regarding the kind of be analyzing yourself on the fly. I can't do that, I guess. Alien, 97th episode. Recorded in 3 places around Warsaw as the last episode in Poland. That's what you had been hearing there most of the time. There was a pheasant. Was that annoying for you to listen? The background
Not
noise?
really. I mostly just blocked it out and just accepted it. And was like, yeah, well, I'm not gonna pay I'm not gonna pay too much attention to this. I'm just gonna focus on doing my part, and it kind of helped me a great deal. I don't know what is the typical listener experience like. Our average listeners brought up by the pheasant.
I've yet to hear any feedback about this episode.
But then again, what episode are we not yet to hear any feedback?
Right. I feel that, well, on some occasions when we have had kind of background ambience, people have actually kind of liked it. And I think that podcasters and maybe people who record voice, they might pay too much attention to the absolute silence of the space and the optimal recording space, that it doesn't have any echo and all that. But a pheasant every once in a while might actually bring something to the end product. Number 98, Zombie Strippers.
The working man film of this podcast. Made to every man out there in the audience.
That was an experience. Half a vodka bottle consumed, and
you can hear it. Like it was once again one of those episodes where we started the episode with a little bit of drink, and then just drink just kind of happened. And the rest of it is somewhat drunk and bumbling. Like.
Yeah, you can already hear it in the voice. Like, not optimal results, but great shouting match. If you're into
it was a shouting match
in like a really confined space, because there was like a bunk bed at my summer house in Finland where I recorded it in Alavus. I was there trying to eliminate the noise and the echo, so I put this kind of a curtain on it, and I was in this kind of a concealed hot space, and the fireplace was on. I just put it. Can you put a fireplace on? Well, I put fire in the fireplace, and for the background ambience, it didn't quite work. There was the wall clock, which I eliminated quite quickly. And it ended up, when I was screaming there, you could really hear it on the levels. It went to the red levels, which should never happen in a professional production. So apologies already. That wasn't a professional day.
But what can you say? Like it's acceptable. You were drunk, or like a professional.
Yeah.
But that all can actually explain away your opinions of the movie.
But I kind of love this few episodes before we got to the 100. So we got this crazy crap in Anshandaloo, this what do you call this surrealist film, short film. Then we went to Alien with pheasants, and on 98 we have Zombie Strippers and shouting match. And on 99 we went to Sprinkled and the general film history and tried to talk about film, but it was more about the history.
It was mostly about the history.
Yeah. So that was kind of that.
That was it. Sprinkled being the shortest film we have ever covered on the podcast.
Yeah. 45, 50 seconds, something like that.
Something like that.
All right. What's next? What's your favorite episode from memory? Anything like that?
Depends perhaps a bit on what is the time frame we are counting from, like from the first one to the 100th, or
maybe all of them.
I don't know. Maybe Yalen.
Wow. Okay. Serious episodes.
Yeah. Because I feel that in Yalen we provided most to the listeners, because we kind of provided the entire framework into the film, or the establishing of the content, came from us, because the film doesn't give you jack shit. It just presents itself to you. From these past 50 episodes, maybe an Andalusian Dog, because that was the most experimental and also the most free flowing for us.
For me, I would probably gravitate always towards Pretty Village, Pretty Flame. Since we did a lot of background research on that, and I think that shows pretty well. Really informative episode. But apart from that, from 51 to 99, I'm really proud of the James Bond episodes, obviously, because I can kind of talk circles around in those areas. So that was fun. From the earlier episodes, yeah, sure, Call Me By Your Name is one that I think we also got to the really emotional area in this podcast. And kind of like that.
Yeah, we the emotional side we kind of started with Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Say that was the opening ourselves as individuals, the episode.
Yeah.
And we have been more open ever since. It kind of doing Apocalypse kind of felt like we were finally leaving a burden out of our shoulders because we were no longer so kind of afraid to address ourselves to the audiences.
Don't know if I ever was afraid to address myself, but that felt like the appropriate episode to get kind of deep diving into your soul.
I most definitely was constantly up until that point. I was constantly trying to keep this kind of a emotional wall between myself and this podcast, and making sure that the version of me that the podcast gets it is kind of a constructed personality. Like I really thought put some work into coming into any given episode in a certain way and leaving kind of myself out of the equation, and that's where it changed for me in Apocalypse Now.
I think we completely skipped talking about the 80th episode, the Birth of a Nation.
And for good fucking reason.
It carries the burden of being probably the most racist film coming from the United States ever.
Yep.
That's about it.
That it was quite the episode to actually do in the end. And
yeah, this is an episode that we could have researched a little bit better, or the subjects around it, at least from my part. So that was a mess.
But then again, it's also the episode where I don't know, we maybe discussed most behind the scenes outside of all the editing nightmare that was the Pretty Village, Pretty Flame, where we had 3 or 5 different versions of the
13.
episode. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, 13 different versions of the episode before we could actually, come to terms with what we release. And in the Birth of a Nation, we had the most discussion between ourselves behind the screens.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss something quickly, just to point out something about Time to Hunt, which could be kind of a revelatory or changing our views of the film quite completely, because there was this actor playing Han, the antagonist of the film, and he revealed that in his opinion, at least, he's not expecting any kind of a sequel to it, and he told that in his opinion it would not even be in the cards of the actor of the director. So that would then essentially mean that what this film is doing is not sequel baiting at all, but it's kind of pretty intelligently kind of wrapping up the story in a way that if you do some heist like this, it will haunt you forever, and the only choice is to go back and face your fears, and that's all you need to tell about the goddamn thing. So that's kind of...
It's kind of a mixed situation where the film itself leaves or ends with a cliffhanger. Because the final survivor of the heist is now fully prepared and fully trained and going back to to South Korea to face off Han again. Han, who has miraculously survived from being shot for the 15 million times. And
But maybe it's kind of the end game, really, that the feeling of uncertainty and that you have to face the fear, and that's all you need to know about the consequences when you get into this situation.
yeah, that also, like, it is kind of a, once again, it's kind of a double-edged situation.
Yeah. To which of our films that we have tackled would you like to return to? Particularly at this point, I don't think I would like to return to any of them. I'm kind of sick of them, editing them and talking about them.
Yeah, I share the feeling. Like, I do have episodes where I feel that I could have done a better performance. Maybe not spending so much of a time being a dyslexic fuck and trying to think, what are words, how do letter, and be more concise and comprehensive, and altogether give a better performance. There are some films where maybe we could have tackled a theme or two more than we did.
Andalusian Dog.
Not necessarily Andalusian Dog. I feel that also Andalusian Dog. Like, with Andalusian Dog, we could have actually covered the art movement history, like, from art to Dadaism, and from Dadaism to Surrealism. We could have actually covered that. We didn't do it because that once again would have been too much of an structure into a episode that was covering a surrealist film. And I do feel still that us not forcing the art history into the discussion was actually a service to that episode, or at least us approaching the film, because the film doesn't want you to put any kind of a construction around it.
Construction around the film, and in a way, with that messed up construction of the episode or lack thereof, we kind of drove the point home that you are not supposed to take it too seriously.
We did drive home the point that this is kind of how you are supposed to approach the film. I do. When we were preparing to record the episode, and this was something where I actually was really hesitant to do the episode. Like, I was telling to you that we should postpone the recording, and I said that I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm supposed to fucking do here. Like, we can't, like, this once again, this comes back to, Kalle Kinnunen calling you out in Twitter and saying that you don't know nothing about films. I do feel that when it came to an Andalusian Dog, when it comes to surrealist piece of film, if you try to understand and talk about it in a typical way, where you have this construction around the discussion, you have a forum, and you are concising the film into that forum by the way how you talk about it, that's precisely you missing the point. And that, especially with Andalusian Dog, where the filmmakers were so goddamn adamant that you shouldn't be doing that, or else you are misunderstanding little shitheel. That was like if we would have then done it, we have actually failed every check that the filmmakers put for us.
Just for the record, I never aimed for doing any kind of real analysis of the film.
And that was kind of the only honest approach that we could take. Like that was, I still do maintain that was us precisely understanding the film and going with the film's rules.
How did you feel when I started the episode and I was completely out of the construction and starting with the ending of the episode? You were with me from the first second, pretty much. I felt it took like a little bit of processing, I guess, but yeah, you got it.
It took even after all the behind the scenes discussion that we had,
Yeah.
and you telling me that we can pull it off, that let's just start the recording a bit later, but we can do it. Even after all that, it did caught me off guard, and it took me some time to get into the groove. But once I did, I did feel that was us being maybe the most free that we have been on this podcast.
Janne. Oh my god.
Well, that I feel that was actually a solid moment. Like the like if you would, I would have to name one Gold Star moment. It would be precisely that. What did you think about Andrews and Doc? I haven't seen it. It doesn't matter. It's a surrealist film.
And inserting Time to Hunt comments from Lee. As you wish. But I made it in a way that it's quite short and it doesn't make any sense. I have taken like a free flow approach to that and just taken everything out of context and mixed Lee's words as you do as a professional editor with your guests.
Yeah, but yeah, like I can imagine that it's a nightmare for the listeners to listen to. Most definitely, but at the same time, how the fuck would you really have talked about an Andalusian dog? Or like you would have done a typical episode and you were done exactly what you have been blamed for not understanding the movie and not going with the film's terms.
Yeah. What's going on in your personal life? Do you want to shed light on what's happening with you apart? We have been discussing this podcast for a hell of a long time here, but anything else in our lives?
I don't know. I usually don't talk about my projects because I'm one of those who don't like to make noise about himself. I just do my work quietly and move on as you do when you are thin. At the moment, I'm once again meddling in video game design, doing a 2D side-scroller action game in this one project. Most likely a little bit of a horrible mess, like was the last time when I was doing a mobile game.
What are you exactly doing there?
I'm working as I'm responsible for the script for the game. I write the dialogue and the narrative and all that shit.
Wow.
But I also am one of the 3 Unreal Engine coders that we have.
C++?
Yeah.
Wow.
And well, I'm not a level designer, but I do take the designs from our art team, and then I construct the levels based on those designs.
Like kind of some basic physical features of the level, the size, or what does it entail?
In the end, it entails basically building the level from the given assets that I get. At the moment, we are still in pretty much in the early stages, so I'm just building some basic level shit. I'm trying out the AI constructs and trying to for example create an NPC that and create a cinematic around the NPC, and then making sure that after the cinematic runs, the friendly NPC turns to hostile, creating the AI patterns for this kind of behavior. But once I get the assets from our art team, because we do our own assets for the game, then it's also up to me to actually build the entire level, like taking the assets and putting them in the right places and making sure that the level looks like it's supposed to look.
Okay, so you've gone through some C++ courses. That's fantastic. That's a foreign world for me. I work in IT, but kind of in my certain limited scope, as you kind of do in IT. It's a huge subject. I've been myself. I've been data analyst for the last 8 months, which basically consists of going through customer data and seeing how many units of anything in particular was sold, and then you collect the data, see that everything is matching up according to our definitions of what the data should hold. That the data, for example, there would be numbers 1 to 10 that you can use in certain field in that data, and I have to see that this is indeed within those parameters. And then when that's validated, I send it forward, and the company can make cute pie charts out of it and see how much they've sold any particular units of stuff. So extremely boring, in fact, but I've learned a lot. Before that, in Poland, I've been in service desk, answering calls and emails, and doing user access management, user account managing in any way. And apart from that, it's pretty much reading whenever I can and doing this podcast and watching movies.
Yeah.
Somehow trying to find time for all of that. But in the core, I think I'm pretty much a lazy person, so I don't run around Finland doing art projects and designing video games.
Well, you usually don't I either. Like I'm not well versed in C++ or C sharp, but I do somehow end up finding myself in this weird video game projects.
You're
and
pushing yourself to be more social and active, I guess.
I
Something is driving you, and it kind of scares me sometimes. What is driving this guy? Is he running away from something deep inside that is bothering him? You said you cannot meditate.
yeah in one way, yeah, I am, I guess. I'm trying to throw myself at work to just keep my past away. I don't really know what drives me. I just know that every now and then I find myself in some kind of a crazy situation where I'm supposed to do something, and I only have a vague understanding what the dick I'm supposed to do. Like on top of this video game project, I'm also supposed to make a sculpture to the Rauma Lace Festival. My deadline is what in 12 days. Fuck. And I'm in wrong city for that. I should be in Pori, to do my fucking sculpting because the deadline is breathing down my neck.
At least you have some targets. My work is going to end, the project will end on the 31st of July, and have no idea what's going to happen next.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like I've said, I'm completely tired of sitting around the computer all day. But yeah, I'm looking for work all around the world. So if you have anything for me, please contact this podcast.
Same here. Same here. If you need an cheap everyman, just drop us send us a private message in our Facebook page. Because even though I do have fucking goal posts, I don't have anything that is actually going to pay any serious money.
I will put this audio file to LinkedIn as first result. Listen to this and hear our proposals. I don't know. Would you be up for the quickies about this podcast?
What about the quickies? Just cut them out.
Favorite performance of this podcast
would be Jeppe in this episode. Really strong performance there, Jeppe. Keep up the good work.
I'm just gonna go with it. I didn't prepare in any way. This is gonna be free flow as we usually do. And Anshandulu, that is some favorite performance right there from us. Favorite shot. What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Favorite shot, probably in Halloween Resurrection.
I've been kind of a ass fisting the favorite shot as we have been going on.
Yeah, or zombie strippers.
Well, Zombie Strippers does have some really good shots about what matters the most.
And what about the favorite scene? Did I raise any scenes here? We have had some fights.
We had we do have had. I don't know what is the favorite fight.
Yeah, well, we haven't had yet any serious fights.
Yeah, like we can have a real life fist fight
Now
right
it's-
there, right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
God damn it!
Yeah, I remember in Pretty Village, Pretty Flame, I said that you can punch me for coming into this film with you. So now's your chance.
Well, it's your luck that I'm too much of a pussy to actually throw a decent punch. Most likely because I would just fracture my wrist.
I honestly don't know. I think we had some great battles in Ghost in the Shell, in fact. So I'll just go with that. Favorite lines. It's probably one of those Bond episodes. Really strong material. Gotta admit. We had a lot of fun in Moonraker. It could be there, fighting with our guest. Favorite kill. This is pretty stupid.
This kind of is. Maybe adding some vodka into my wine.
Really?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, cheers. Yeah, that doesn't taste good at all. Like not to the listeners, never mix cheap Belgian vodka with rose wine.
Noted. I would never do that anyway.
But hey, that's alcoholism for you.
Favorite kill.
I guess my liver.
I don't know if it's favorite, but we kind of killed off Tom Franklin in many moments, or maybe we pushed him aside a bit by just talking for hours, and the poor guy just doesn't get an opportunity to talk much.
Maybe Lee, our most clickbaited guest on the podcast.
Yeah, yeah, we did have that picture of him.
We do have the entire Time to Hunt episode, which we got some indirect listener feedback.
Oh, okay, did I post you that one that Lee got from one?
You
of his
you
friends?
did you did. I feel clickbaited. I listened to 2 hours of podcast just to listen here 10 minutes from ya.
That happened. What drew you out?
Your opinions on zombie strippers. like fuck you. Take a cork to the chest, man.
Yeah, well, what drew me out? Insanely long editing sessions. Spending most of my life with this podcast. Not having, frankly, as much listeners as we would like to have. We do have a very long recording sessions, which we could kind of try to minimize, but we are not too good with that.
Yeah, like looking at my Audacity, we are now going with 2 hours and 40 minutes already.
Sick.
That the person who is supposed to provide the roof on top of my head is already kind of sending me messages on WhatsApp. Like when you are gonna quit, I'm gonna go to sleep. And just, offhand, I'm trying to tell her that, just hold on a little bit longer. We're almost done.
Well, you can always stay here and see where it goes.
Well, all the bars are already closed.
What drew me out? Sometimes I think we just bumble on in the episode.
No shit.
Like, we don't have much to say. Let's just do the scene by scene and good night. What drew you in?
I don't know. The vague promise that film podcasters get pussy. I'm starting to notice that the booze is finally starting to affect me.
I think so too. Well, kind of the thoroughness. Sometimes we actually have really good points in the podcast. And that we go through films that not all of the podcasts do. And I think we are a pretty good podcast.
Yeah, that's the thing for me too. Like, we don't manage to do it in every single individual episode, but there are episodes where we really manage to address quite a heavy topic. And I do think that in those moments we kind of do manage to do, and this being a self-congratulating thing for me to say, but pretty damn good job.
I think we should pay more attention to the type of films that we select so we could have more of a topic here.
Maybe, yeah, but then again, I do think that part of the reason why we have had such of a good discussions around film during these 99 episodes is because we at times have been really free flowing it. And not having like a tight schedule. Like, this is the film we are going to cover this film, and we are being kind of more pulling it off from the hip, and that has occasionally once again led us into some interesting waters. Not always into easy waters, but interesting ones.
True. Scissors of Sacrilege, what would you change in the podcast? I think we have already mentioned everything.
I guess so.
Beating the dead horse.
Yeah, like there are moments that from me that I'm not most proud of. But yeah, outside of those, I don't really know what I would change. Maybe X the quickies.
Oh, well, you're always axing all of this list.
I'm always axing the lists. I hate the lists, and basically everyone in my circles who listens to the podcast, all of which have actually negative things to say about our podcasts, always mentions that, axe the quickies.
Wow.
And insert something else. Like, for example, a segment where we go through the main characters of the film and their motivations and what type of characters they are.
Yeah, this is something that I occasionally pay attention to, and I actually kind of build a character map as I kind of did for Time to Hunt. We could do that. Yeah, good point. Axe some of the quickies. I'm all for that one. Speaking of, 3 adjectives to describe this podcast.
Humiliating, disaster, waste of your time, dear listener.
There you go. Expensive.
Because this actually is like this especially to you, this actually has cost quite a lot of money, because you have been the one to buy all the software.
Yep.
And the gear
and the page space
and all of that, all of the things that suck out money have come out of your pocket, and we are still to see a dime more than €3 from this one. I don't know who gifted you that €3, but you know.
You can only guess. You know?
Yeah. Thank you a lot, Heli.
But I think we need to really rethink this whole. I think we should go back to Patreon, or actually do anything with Patreon. Change it to Patreon. The thing is that, currently I think we're not really abiding the law here, so we need to actually provide some services in return for that money to be illegal.
Yeah, well, you know my stance. Fuck the law.
Yeah, I mean, this would work in the US as far as I know, just like this, but in Finland there's this kind of different approach.
We can actually buy a PO box from US and change our legal address to that PO box.
Great thinking.
And that would be us circumventing the Finnish tax laws.
There you go.
In this film podcast, which does not condone any criminal activities.
Of course.
Of course not.
Expensive, far-stretching, life wasting.
Yeah, like I'm still to see any sex that I would have gotten because I'm doing a film podcast.
Keep on looking.
yeah.
It wasn't like the opposite effect. Half of your Facebook friends left you. So if you'd make a sequel to this podcast, well, that doesn't make any sense. Watch that. Did you look at your watch during this podcast?
No, but my battery just died on the laptop, which was recording both on Audacity and Reaper. And now I only have my cell phone. Holy fucking shit! Whoops!
Then in that case, we better hurry. I just changed the battery in my MacBook Air because I realized that I kind of need a battery in the powerless, electric-less summer house.
Well, to my defense, this piece of shit laptop was still telling me that I have like 45% of battery.
Oh, yeah.
So fuck you, Packard and Bell.
Would you recommend this podcast?
I would recommend marrying your cousin more than listening to this trite.
Which is perfectly legal in many US states.
In the US, so, United States,
From Morocco.
Please, Morika, please unfuck yourself. It's a good remark to make because I understood that a large part of our listener base comes from America.
So I've understood.
Yeah,
least the bots.
so all your American listeners, go fuck yourselves. But yeah, I kinda still would actually. Honest to God, I would recommend our podcast because we are poor and we need money.
How would I not be able to recommend a podcast that I waste my life on? Yeah.
Well, it's actually not recommending the podcast is more and is an easier thing to do than to recommend the podcast. At least for me.
It's easy to recommend a podcast for me. It's not so easy to recommend particular episodes of the podcast.
Okay.
Let's say it that way.
Okay, because to me it's always hard to recommend anything that I do. I'm always more of a person that goes like, pay attention to these guys and look how great this thing is, and I'm always kind of downplaying playing anything that I do. Yeah. As some listeners have pointed out, like
you said, it has. We have had some great conversations here, and guests and all that.
Yeah, and in the end, and for me, the main aim of this podcast and why I do this podcast is to create that conversation, because I believe that as long as we as people around the world globally, as long as we are just talking to each other, that's and as long as we are listening to each other and listening to different viewpoints into situations, as long as we are doing that, we are not actually doing anything more harsh. We are preventing ourselves from fighting between each other, and we are introducing ourselves to the other person's viewpoint. That's also the whole founding principle of European Union. Like you get all these countries that haven't really got on together that well in the past into one table, and you try to tie them down into that table and make sure that the conversation stays on, because as long as every country is around the table and having a discussion, all those countries are not, militarizing their army and attacking the neighboring country. And that's also what I feel with this podcast. Like, our true merit is in trying to keep up the conversation and trying to present different viewpoints to our listeners and to the any given film, and through the film to the different cultures, and through the cultures to the world. And I do feel that even though not every fucking episode that we have done is outright gold,
No.
but
Not at all.
there still are moments when we actually do manage to do this. Like we do present different viewpoints. We do take that here is this country and this is where they are coming from, and this is how they see the situation. And if we can do that even once, even fucking once, I do think that that's enough of justification for us as a podcast to exist. And I kind of feel that we have at least given a solid attempt of doing that.
And with that, I would go with, you really know you're watching or listening to the Flick Lab podcast when you're having a dialogue with the world. And there's a lot of things actually behind kind of the actual kind of subject matter, the film itself that we are doing in this podcast. And that's one of them, a really good point.
Yeah, and I well, coming to the like you mentioned, the subject matter behind the film, I do think that that's kind of the key thing to any given film, and that's what we are trying. At least we are trying our best to give you as a podcast host. That's why an episode of the Flick Lab can start with a goddamn 2 hour long history session into a civil war on this territory,
Yeah.
or that's why we can. I studied the financial situation of South Korea just to understand the relationship between South and North Korea, and that's why we have been humping up about this is North Korea and this is South Korea, and everything that may. I get that it may sound really boring to a listener who tunes in just to get the film analysis, just to get into the would you recommend this film part of the podcast. But I would still think that when it comes to actually doing something that is important, that's kinda where we are most doing it. Like when we are talking about the countries and the people behind the movie.
And that's the kind of tricky waters, how to find these listeners who are interested in this type of a background research. Good, because, well, I feel that there is enough already of podcasts who do kind of the basic thing. They go through the actual movie, not really some movies mainly that don't need a huge background dive. But since we do the films that we do, we kind of have to go there anyway. And I hope we will keep on finding listeners who are on the same frequency with us and would like to hear about it.
Yeah, hopefully. But that's also tricky waters to us as podcast hosts. Because it's really hard, like coming from Finland, and trying to approach a country completely different to you, like goddamn North Korea, and still trying to stay level-headed, even though your baseline reaction to that country is completely the opposite.
Yeah.
Because Finland is not, air quotation marks, communist dictatorship. So it's really hard to every now and then, kind of just put your liberal democratic Finnish self in the background and trying to come from a clean table to another country and trying to see really what that country and what those peoples are, out of.
Yeah. One more point about that. It didn't begin in this way. We're just starting as any kind of a film podcast.
We were, and like the Rear Window episode was us just going to buy the scene by scene, and pointing out some of the illogicalities within the film and some of the flops in the camera work, and the really odd speeding up the film at the end moments.
Yep.
And just poking fun of that. And then we get to the Halloween films, the first two, which was just us, gushing over about the film, how great it is. Oh my god, John Carpenter is a genius. Oh my god, the sequel is actually much better than everybody gives it credit to. Then we had the fight, but or difference of opinion. But still the pretty safe, pretty typical take on Halloween 3, and that's how we carried over for the most of the time.
And then we got to In the Name of pretty quick. I think it was the first movie after the marathon, and that kind of switched something in me that I think this is something that we could expand upon.
It was the film where we actually talked about heavy subject.
Yeah.
And where we were talking about something that the film was about and what the film addressed, but what wasn't really on the surface level. Like in that episode we did talk about Catholic Church and its relationship to homosexuality. Something that we didn't completely address, something where there's still much to say about, as Catholicism in general. There's a lot for us to still say about and discuss about as a thing, as a theme.
Sure.
But that was the moment where we kind of left behind the safety net that we had in the Halloween marathon, where it was just enough of us, paying really close attention into individual things like the mask and the walk and individual scenes.
Well, quite a ride. 2 years. I can't really say that I'll be up for the next 100 episodes in this podcast. That's too much to think about or even comprehend. Let's just go episode by episode and see if we get there.
Yeah, that has actually served us pretty well.
Yeah.
Because we kind of stopped counting after the 7th episode. There was the 7th episode curse, which we were afraid that will also touch upon us. Then we, took notice that this is the episode 8, this is episode 9, this is episode 10. And then we just, said that we have escaped the 7 episode curse, and we just stopped counting the episodes. And all of a sudden we were on the 50th episode, which meant, a year, a solid year of doing this thing. And now we are in the 100th, and this is over 2 years of podcasting.
Yeah. Wasting your life and health and money. That's how it goes.
And that's how it goes. But I don't know, Like in my dreams, there is an individual, like one individual that we have managed to reach,
Yeah.
and someone who actually gains something from this, someone who feels that he's not completely alone in this world, because there were two at times drunken Finnish guys who managed to say the right words for that person in that time, in that situation. And if we manage to do that even once, then these 2 years have been worth it.
Well said. I feel that as long as we continue on the way that we have already continued since the beginning, the way that I think, still pick movies that are kind of personal or have something that we really want to talk about, and we don't just, get a line of 4 films that we really don't care about. Just, we have to have something that is interesting to us. And that's how it's been working out for me, at least for the 100 episodes. I don't know how you've been able to cope with all of my selections so far, but here we are.
Well, your selections also have led me into films that I wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Yeah, some Polish films and Asian flicks. And
Not so much Asian flicks. With the Asian flicks, I was mostly familiar with, like the Blue Light and Taikuki, and maybe I would have seen Time to Hunt. I wouldn't have checked out Hong Dong. I most likely wouldn't have checked out Hong Dong.
Yeah.
But otherwise, when it comes to Asian films, I was kind of in the safe waters. What I'm more looking at is well, Yen, Pretty Village, Pretty Flame, No Man's Land. Even I also have to admit, also the Polish films. Most likely would have gone perhaps through my life without checking out those. So the podcast also has, as a film buff, being a co-host in this podcast, it has been kind of a cinematic treasure trove to me, because I've come to experience and see films that I most likely wouldn't have seen otherwise. So, thank you for that.
Well, thank you also for educating me with some of those classics that I still had not touched upon up to this point. And that's the kind of way that keeps me ticking here. Thanks for our listeners for bearing with us thus far. I have no idea what's going to happen in our next episode, the 101st. And frankly, my dear listener, I don't give a damn.
Yeah, same here. Like at this point, I'm kind of done with the meticulous and very thought out movie calendar that we had. We have been more free flowing in our past selections, and I do think that has served us at least relatively well.
Yeah, it felt a little bit exhausting when you knew that you had to do this international cinema challenge thing. Or
Yeah,
glad to be past that.
yeah, and I'm most definitely happy to get past or be far past the Halloween marathon.
All right. As this is our 100th, I will not bother you talking about our social medias. You know where to find us. If you don't, you're bad.
Well, there's 99 other episodes
Where I have
where we have mentioned it.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts on this? Anything that sticks out or whatnot?
I don't really know.
I'm kind of empty after. Well, it's been quite of a run to this 100th lately. I've talked about so many things.
Yeah, same here. Like the only topic maybe left for discussion is the political nature of art, and by art this podcast. But then again, I'm not entirely sure if there is a discussion for us to have for tonight on that topic. Like it's obvious at this point that, or the fact is that all art is in some way it's always political. Everyone who is tied with art is somehow political. If not willingly, then by birth, and through birth and through growing up, by getting some ideals into them, by existing in any given society. And as a podcast who dwells in film, which by default is political, as its makers are political even if they don't want to, we also as a podcast we are somewhat political. That's something that you can actually see in our episodes, in for example in the way how we have approached religion.
Yeah, the worst outbursts I think have been cut out, but you always, you go to the editing booth and after you have had this kind of a fiery rage, you realize what you should keep in and what you should not. So that it's not that I'm trying to make them too tame. I just see that which part is bullshit and which one is okay to go with.
Yeah, but even without that, you can see that from our episodes. We rarely touch upon religion, and when we have touched upon Christianity, it's usually been pretty critical. Like in the name of the big sell-off thing was Catholic Church and homosexuality. That's already a loaded topic.
We keep talking how we're not a political podcast, but who isn't?
Yeah, in the end, who isn't? Like there was that one time when our guest and you cut it into the opening lines of our episode in the Cozy Dens, went and stated that the proletariat of the world can go fuck themselves, and if you really would want to establish the proletariat essentially are the working class of the world whose main contribution to their benefactor is the work that they give. So essentially it's the blue collar workers around the world, the factory workers and the road workers and basically everyone else who doesn't do a cozy hyped up office job, and all of those people can go fuck themselves.
Essentially it was a fun line and a great delivery and a way to get the point home in the first 5 seconds that we speak English, but we also want to have this cultural, and that we appreciate and want to have like a Czech expert.
That might be a talking point that was lost in translation, because when taking out of context and simply when giving an emphasis to that one line, it kind of it might give you the image that Kari who works in IT and works in cozy office job, which back in Poland, not necessarily in Finland, but in Poland, was somewhere in the, I don't know, the more well-off middle class.
In Poland, it's well-off middle class kind of wage. Of course, in Finland, it's nothing.
Yeah, but that same Kari might tell the factory workers to go fuck themselves. Like that's a reading that you can take off from that moment. So with that out of the mind, we haven't been completely apolitical as a podcast. But then again, at the same time, no art ever is apolitical. No person is apolitical. We all carry political beliefs within ourselves, whether we want to or not. But we have an idea of society. through the world where we have been born into and where we have grown up. Like I have mostly stayed in Finland, and Finland is rather liberal, rather leftist, rather social democratic country. So obviously, fucking obviously, I hold those values close to my heart. I do think that social democratic states are much better than, purely capitalistic driven states, or the quote unquote communist states that you have in North Korea and China, which are absolute shitholes if you ask me. So of course I am a political person, and if I would ever make a film, it would mirror my beliefs and how I see the world. So whatever film I would ever produce, it would in some realm it would always be a political product, much in the same way as this podcast in some way is political.
But also in the same way that we have the title The Flick Lab, kind of suggesting that we kind of tear the film apart piece by piece. At least that was my idea. And we sort of kind of, if you will, take it into the laboratory and we try to break it down in as neutral way as possible and try to see what they really wanted to say, not take any sides in a strong fashion, just try to be respectful towards all the views, and that's what you've been doing. Especially, you've been really balanced and careful, so I appreciate that.
I would say that at times we really have achieved that.
Yeah,
I would say most of the time we actually have, like, we can never be apolitical as individuals, you and me. We always carry with ourselves a notion of what is wrong, what is right, how the society should be, what is sustainable society-wise. And all of those are political thoughts. And
sure.
and but outside of that, I do honestly I do feel that we have given the films pretty fair treatment in the podcast. We didn't crucify Honkil Dong
No,
simply because it came from North Korea. We did call it out on its racism, and that was a fair adjustment. Like, we were right to do that.
Yeah.
That even in neutral territory, that was something that you would have to address. But we didn't just crucify it as being a North Korean propaganda film.
Too easy.
We did also see merit in that film. And we didn't simply crucify Pretty Village, Pretty Flame just because,
Serbia.
because Serbians are the bad guys of the civil war, which would have been an easy road for us to take, but we did give it a honest treatment. And we did even endorse that film.
Yeah, wars are a little bit tricky and all this kind of group happenings, because I really would like to, even though I'm a human, I try to kind of approach all of this from an individualistic standpoint, that it's not the group mentality that interests me. It's kind of all the views that you can possibly muster, comprehend, just put it together and realize that you can't just draw blanket conclusions.
Yeah, because word and people there are complicated. Like we don't live in a black and white world. It's kind of it's easy to say that party A is bad and party A is in wrong. North Korea is bad. Serbia is bad. But it's not that. The situations, they are more complex.
We should have named this podcast Shades of Grey. That's what it all boils down to.
It kind of does, and I'm kind of proud of it.
Yeah.
Like honest to God, I do feel that we have managed to do at least something right during these 2 years.
And honestly, I'm kind of proud of also the way that we are able to approach perhaps different kinds of crowds in a way that we suppose we keep it in a youthful way, that we speak and use kind of a rough language sometimes. But regardless, I think we managed to be two adults speaking about serious situations. So
Yeah.
clap for that. I think I've said everything that I wanted to say here.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Well, this was a really lucky break. We managed to be in Helsinki at the same time for 100th. And I just came to Helsinki a little bit earlier than I was supposed to, so it just happened pretty beautifully like this. All right, I guess that would be 1 month of a break for us, and even a little more than that. So, dear listeners, thanks for tuning in once again. We have no idea what's going to happen next, but the next episode is going to drop in approximately the next 4 weeks. So please do enjoy your rest of the summer, what's left of it, around where you're living. And we'll try to do the same, considering our short break of having good weather here in the cold north region.
Yeah, in the miserable Finland, where the only difference between winter and the summer is that in the summer you also have the mosquitoes.
Right. Yeah. I think you need to head back to your base.
I think I've consumed enough alcohol that it might be already showing.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm no stranger to booze, so
Occasional boozing. So once again, see you later, alligator. It's the Flick Lab signing out. Adios.
ehkä se oli siinä.
Tämmöstä se on Questscript.
Musta tuntuu, että alkoholimaat saattaa hiukkasen noista viimein päähän.
Jätetäänkö toi tohon loppuun?
Jätetään se siihen. Ei se ole mitään väliä.
Täytyy käydä vessassa.
Käydään vessassa. Käydään eka. Ei mennä yhdestä.
No ei.
Se olisi vähän kiusallista.